Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. It is Friday Eve. It's really good to have you here. There's a brand new case that just dropped into my lap, and it's a bit jaw-dropping to say the very least, because if the sheriff's office is right, and the 17-year-old girl they've just arrested on a double murder is the one who killed her own parents, why did it take 6 months? Why did it take 6 months to figure it out? Is a 17-year-old girl so clever she could pull off the perfect double murder and get away with it for half a year? Or was it really, really easy and somebody just missed the red flags? No matter what, I want you to see the eulogy that this 17-year-old girl in Georgia gave for her mom and her stepdad, the dearly departed.
I just wanted to say goodbye to my mom and Jamie since we never got the chance to. I was so used to you guys always being here to the point that I never once thought to imagine y'all not being here.
Now, you cannot argue with the drama that is on that stage, right? Her 5-year-old sister found the bodies of her parents. This 17-year-old mugshot was the one who called 911. But, and it's a big one, sheriff's deputies say they've got a mountain of evidence, digital and otherwise, and one of their representatives is here tonight. I've got so many questions. That's coming next. Also, in the trial of Justin Moan in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, I thought it was going to be an easy one. I thought that the guy who allegedly killed his own father, severed his head, and held it up on YouTube, ranting about the federal government, would be a no-brainer. It would be an insanity defense, right? For sure. I can't even show you the picture without some serious digitization, because you know what's under the blur. That's his father's head, right after the killing. But I was really wrong, because it was not an insanity defense, and there was a trial. And we are right in the midst of it. We are on the eve of the verdict. But here's the weird part. There is not a jury to vote guilty or not guilty. I'm going to explain all of it to you. That's coming up in just a moment, because there was somebody there in the courtroom to watch all of it, because that fella took the stand in his own defense. I know, don't ask. Then it just wouldn't be a month without some sort of reporting on Luigi Mangione. And wouldn't you know it, the internet just broke because a photo got leaked from the lockup where Luigi Mangione is currently awaiting trial. And if this is what it appears to be, there's Luigi with an inmate friend crouching and smiling for the cameras inside the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. But I couldn't help notice the thing on his wrist. It's a wristwatch. Do you get wristwatches in a place like that? Turns out, yes. And guess what? There's a lot more you can get in that commissary, especially when you have $1 million that all those fans have sent to you. I'm going to tell you all about that in a hot moment, but let's start here, shall we? It is easy to spot somebody who just lost a parent or a sibling or a close friend, especially to violence. It's easy because they're in shock and they're in pain and they are begging for answers and justice. But it is hard to spot someone who kills a parent or sibling or friend, because oftentimes they look just like everybody else, like all the people in mourning. And that may be why it took police almost 5 months to charge Sarah Grace Patrick with killing her own mom and her stepdad in their bed back in February, just outside of Atlanta. Kristen Brock was 41, and her husband James was 45. They were shot to death, their bodies discovered by their youngest child, who was just 5 years old. Police say the 5-year-old alerted her 16-year-old sister, Sarah Grace, and that Sarah Grace called 911. The responding deputies found no signs of forced entry, no signs that anything had been stolen from this rural home, just one slightly open door and 2 bullet-riddled bodies. The double murder stunned the small community in Carroll County. Between them, this couple had 7 children, and they were loved and respected and active in their church. And while police searched for their killer, their daughter, Sarah Grace, was sharing her grief on social media. She posted a selfie on her way to her parents' funeral, captioned, "This can't be real." And then came the heart-rending eulogy.
And I know at nighttime I can go and look at Mama and Jamie in the sky, and gladly they will save me a seat in heaven like they saved for you. I'm sorry. Gladly they will save a seat for me in heaven like they saved a seat for me in this very church. Although there's nothing we can do to bring them back, we still have control over how we treat people with us today. Therefore, when someone tries to tell you anything, no matter how important it could be, just listen, because you never know when it's somebody's time to go. You could say goodnight and wake up a few hours just to find out they aren't there.
Weeks later, there was another video. Sarah Grace crying and asking, "Please send prayers for healing." She reportedly even reached out to a true crime podcaster for help in solving her mom and stepdad's murders. But that was then, and this is now. There's Sarah Grace just a week ago, looking pretty glamorous and very, very happy. 6 months after the murders here, 5.5. And then here's Sarah Grace this week. We've got pictures of her courtesy of the skilled photographer at the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. Sarah Grace Patrick is now 17 and facing very, very adult murder charges for the death of her mother and her stepfather. She turned herself in on Tuesday, escorted by her biological father.
Today, we can confirm that an arrest has been made in the case. Kristen Brock's 17-year-old daughter, Sarah Grace Patrick, has been taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault in connection with the deaths of her mother and her stepfather.
Here's something that does not bode well for Sarah Grace Patrick. The investigators say they have, quote, "mountains of physical and digital evidence," end quote. And joining me now to elaborate on that, I hope, is Ashley Halsey from the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, who you just saw in that press conference. Ms. Halsey, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining me on the program tonight. Can I ask you, what was it that specifically led to the arrest of Sarah Grace Patrick this week after almost 6 months since the killings?
Well, as I'm sure you're aware, Ashley, covering crime cases for so many years as you have, it doesn't happen overnight. I know everybody from the very beginning wanted an arrest and wanted somebody taken into custody. I wish it was that simple. But there are mountains of evidence you have to go through. In the times that we live in today, not only do you have the forensic and the DNA evidence, but you also have a lot of digital evidence as well. And sometimes that takes a long time for those things to return from different labs and whatnot. So I can't give you the specifics on exactly what pieces of evidence led us to the arrest on Tuesday, but I can tell you that it was how we followed the case, how the evidence came to be, and that is what led us to the arrest of Sarah Grace on Tuesday.
So I totally get you. A lot of people these days think that, you know, murders are solved like they are on the TV shows, CSI and Forensic Files, and then they're not. It takes a lot longer. You're right. However, I will say this. Arrests are usually fairly quick, especially when you have somebody who's a suspect who's 17, because the 17-year-olds aren't the most clever of the bunch. And that's why I was sort of flummoxed with the length of time it took. What kind of digital trail did you discover? I mean, have you got phones and laptops?
Well,
have you got tapped phones? Have you got just messaging? Like, what have you got?
Well, backing up just a little bit, in the beginning of this, everybody was a suspect. It wasn't that we immediately honed in on Sarah. Names were given to us of other individuals that could possibly have a motive or something like that. So those people have to be ruled out, right? We have to make sure at the end of the day that we feel confident that we are taking the right person in custody, especially when you're dealing with someone who is grieving possibly the loss of their parents. But throughout this investigation, as you've seen yourself through TikTok and other social media platforms, not only do you have all of that to sift through, but you may have phone records, you may have different types of geographical records that have to be sifted through as well. And unfortunately, that takes a lot of time to get those warrants back and be able to have somebody process all of that evidence. So we did not rush to judgment. She is just charged in this phase right now, so that is where we're at today.
So was there anything about Sarah Grace's 911 call that raised the hackles and made you think, red flag, time to look more deeply at her?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe that the story that we were given that morning, of course, was that the sister of Sarah Grace, the little girl, she was 5 at the time, she's 6 now, woke up and found her parents deceased and then came and told Sarah, who then made the 911 call.
You're saying it's a story. Are you saying it's just a story, or are you saying it's possibly accurate?
I'm telling you that the 911 call came in from Sarah after her sister found them, and that is all I know at this point.
So you still do believe that the 5-year-old, now 6-year-old child made the discovery and told Sarah about it?
Yes. And of course, we've conducted forensic interviews with the child as well.
Okay. That's always hard, too. Wow, when they're 5 and 6 years old, those are really tricky.
Absolutely.
What about that eulogy, Ashley? The eulogy, I found it hard to even understand. We put captioning on the screen because it seemed like she was terribly distraught. Was there anything in the eulogy that stood out to you that was a clue?
I was not personally there. We did have investigators that, of course, went to the funeral. I've said this before, in any situation where we don't make an arrest right away, we always want to be present, not only to support the family through their grief at the funeral, but to make sure that nothing stands out. I will say, to me, just watching it online, I can't tell you if she had real tears. I wasn't there to see it in person, but it seemed odd. It was more like a speech. And at the end, she said, "I'm sorry." Was that, "I'm sorry because I may have done this," or is it, "I'm sorry because I was upset during this eulogy"? We may never know the answer to that, but that did stand out to me at the time.
Then also the TikToks, the social media. Was there anything in the social media that you found odd, that you found, tweaked your interest to look further at her, or that stood out as an absolute clue and was a piece of the puzzle?
So I'm not the investigator that investigated the case. I get this information from the investigators to pass on what I'm able to the public, but I can tell you that her social media was followed, and the trails still continue to be followed today, because when you want to post your life online, it becomes fair game during an investigation like this.
That's fascinating. There's one other thing that I found interesting. You said more arrests could be possible. Can you elaborate a little on that?
So what we believe is through, interviews that we have had with Sarah, her father has been present during those as well. Different information that we've gotten throughout the course of the investigation, and now that she's in custody, could possibly lead to other individuals that may have been a part of this. So that is what we're following now, are those leads and seeing where that takes us. But we're not ruling it out.
When you say a part of this, do you mean a part of the actual killings, a part of the, accessory after the fact, harboring, or what?
Well, it's
what
hard
are you
to
thinking?
tell. It's hard to tell, but I can tell you that we're looking at a couple of different aspects that someone could have been involved or had knowledge, and we won't know all those facts until we continue to work this case. It remains a very active and fluid case, and just because we made an arrest doesn't mean we don't still have a lot of work to do.
Ms. Halsey, is Sarah Grace cooperating? I know the last I heard they were looking for a public defender, or maybe even a private defense attorney who might volunteer his or her services. But in the interim, is she cooperating with investigators and talking while in custody?
Up until the arrest, yes, she has been cooperative. Her dad has been cooperative. Any of the family that we've reached out to has been. I do believe that she has a public defender at this point. I have not been privy to the information since she has been placed in custody, so I don't know what those conversations have been since then.
But you think she was cooperating up until the arrest. You're just not sure if she's still cooperating since arrest. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Is there anything I'm missing that you can tell me that I haven't asked?
What I would say is this, one reason why I'm thankful to be given this platform to do these interviews is, as humans, we have conversations with people every day, and they may be very benign, but then you hear a little piece of something that happens, like Sarah Grace being arrested, and maybe you've had a conversation with Sarah, or maybe you've had a conversation with someone else within our community or within the social media world that maybe now means something different than it did then. So I would tell everyone that if you have a little piece of the puzzle that may help us, we urge you to contact the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, because it may seem insignificant, but it could actually be a big deal. And, our end goal is to provide justice for the victims, for the little girl. I mean, she's really the most innocent victim in all of this, the 6-year-old, but also to be able to provide a full closure to the family who very much deserves that.
Yeah, it's a good call to action, and every little detail in an investigation, can't stress that enough. Every little detail can actually be really big. Ashley Halsey, it's really good to have you. Keep us posted, will you?
Thank you. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
Anybody who's named Ashley is welcome back. Thanks so much. All right. In the days after the murders, Kristen Brock's father, that would be Sarah Grace's grandfather, offered a $5,000 reward to help find the killer. His name is Dennis Nolan, and he told reporters, and I quote, "These murders, whoever did them, was cold-blooded." But now his own granddaughter's been arrested, and Nolan is firmly in her corner. He says that he, Grandpa, was Sarah Grace's first call from jail, and Nolan spoke exclusively with our Alex Capriello.
Ashley, the Carroll County Sheriff's Office says it has a mountain of both physical and digital evidence tying Sarah Grace Patrick to the murders of both her mother and her stepfather. But I just spoke to her grandfather, who believes she's innocent. He's going to continue to stand behind her and wants to actually see that evidence for himself before changing his mind.
Well, it's hard to make any judgment at this point. They have to release the evidence, and I don't understand what evidence they have. I think most of it, from what I understand, is circumstantial. And, she's my granddaughter. I have to stand behind her. She swears her innocence.
So have you had a chance to speak to the detectives?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've talked to them at length. And they don't release any information. If they had something concrete, they would have arrested her a whole lot sooner. I mean, why wait months after everyone's sort of on hold and waiting to see what evidence they have for saying that Sarah did this? I just can't imagine her. I mean, she's a sweet young lady. She's always been, a wonderful little girl. What can I say? I just can't imagine her doing such a horrific thing, especially to her mother. She and her mother were very close, and they were doing great at that time. They had a great relationship.
Did they have conflicts in the past?
Mother-daughter always have their disagreements, but nothing serious. I just don't know. I know James had a very, strange past, that he was a convicted felon, and I think at one time was part of a motorcycle gang.
Do you think James's past might be something to look into?
I reflected that to the detectives early on. I said, I wonder if this is, James' past and coming back to haunt him.
Have you had a chance to speak to Sarah Grace?
I spoke to her after she was in jail. She called me. Of course, she was very upset. I mean, she always looked to me more as a father figure. She was begging for me to help, and I explained to her, there's nothing I can do at this point.
Wow, so her one phone call came to you, sir?
Yeah, she was very upset. I mean, she just was begging, please help me get out of this mess. And I told her just to do what they say and be cooperative, and we'll do what we can.
It's an unbelievable step to take, but it's not one that police and investigators take lightly to move forward with charging documents and arrest warrants. You know, of course, innocent until proven guilty, but that really is a leap for the police to take if they didn't feel like they had a case, right?
Yeah. Well, their answer to me was, she's the only one who could have done it. I said, well, what proof do you have? And he said, well, I can't tell you that, but I could just say that she's the only one who could have done it.
Sarah Grace Patrick is currently locked up and waiting for a public defender to be appointed to her. Her grandfather tells me that he'd help her find a defense attorney, but hopes someone actually steps up for the job after hearing her story and her claim of innocence. Ashley?
And our great thanks to Alex Capriello for that. If Sarah Grace Patrick is convicted, she faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. Think about that. At 17 years old, that could be well over 70 years in prison. No chance for parole. It's an adult charge. We're going to watch this case closely. And still to come, if you were looking for details, when Bryan Kohberger confessed to the University of Idaho murders, and I am assuming that you were probably just as disappointed as I was. The only words Kohberger said in court were yes, no, and guilty. But he did something else in court. He signed 2 documents. And if you know what you're looking at, that signature, anybody's signature, speaks volumes. Our handwriting expert cracks the code next. Convictions and confessions close cases, but they don't always solve mysteries. And so it is with the vicious and senseless murders that Bryan Kohberger admits that he committed in Moscow, Idaho, while never answering the second biggest question of all, which is why? Why did you do it? Why did you pick those 4? Why were you so brutal and cruel? Why did you want to kill 4 innocent kids? Legally, motive doesn't matter. So it did not come up in court, and it is nowhere in the documents that Bryan Kohberger signed. Unless, of course, you see those documents through the eyes of a highly trained professional, which my next guest very much is. Bart Baggett is one of the world's leading forensic handwriting experts and has spent some quality time poring over Bryan Kohberger's samples. Bart, it is so good to see you again. It's been forever and a day. I was really looking forward to talking to you about this. I'd love to hear your overall thoughts as you just looked at these signatures for the first time.
Well, Ashley, thanks for having me back on the show. I really thought maybe you're punking me because these signatures are so strange. I thought, is a 4th grader writing this, or is this a drug addict? Like I didn't, and then I started following the story because I'm behind on it, and oh my gosh, this is one of the weirdest signatures I've seen from a convicted killer.
So let's sort of dig in. He's got the signature on the plea agreement and on the confession. When you do your science, do you look at one particular sample? Do you compare to other samples? Or how do you ply your trade?
Well, I would love to have pages and pages of a diary. That would be the most secure thing. But one of the interesting things is one of these documents in 23, he forgets a lot of his letters. Like he's not even coherent enough to spell his own name. And then the 25 one, he spells his own name. But the most obvious thing is it just looks like a low skill level. And so that's the technical word. If somebody doesn't know how to write English or they're just learning how to sign their name in 3rd grade, they don't have the skill level. They don't have the neuromuscular repetition like you and I did hours and hours and hours in 3rd or 4th grade. So what I was saying, I wasn't being flippant, like, is this a 4th grader or is this someone with brain damage? And so that was the problem, is it's like, what would cause someone with such a good education to literally have neuromuscular degeneration at 28 years old? It's a perplexing case.
So I was talking with my staff, and some of us are over 50 and some of us are under, 30. And we wondered if it might be a generational thing because, in a lot of schools, cursive went out the window. And so trying to create a signature, if you're not really, if you don't have good cursive muscle memory, might be tricky. Have you seen that in your practice?
I think that's a very fair argument. I have seen people under 30, and I'm like, wait a second, I can't be too judgy, because if they didn't go to a school where they had hours and hours of handwriting, they may have low skill level. So that is true. I don't see how a guy gets a master's degree and a PhD school without filling out hours and hours and hours of blue books. We know he's not from a different country. We know he's not just learning English. I think it has something to do with his heroin usage. I did a little research, and there's a lot of evidence that with heroin usage, if that's true, by the way, it does affect decision-making, motor control, fine motor coordination, tremors, and slow movement. That obviously is what we're seeing in the handwriting. So maybe it really is residual brain damage.
And what about, illness? Like, might he be suffering from any kind of illness given what you're seeing on the page?
Yeah, the most accepted forms of illness through handwriting are Parkinson's, dementia, and Alzheimer's. He's way too young to do those unless it's Parkinson's. Parkinson's is similar to what we're seeing here, but I didn't read about that in any of the footage. So no, I think he's not cognitively as sharp as we think he is. I think he's slow. I think he's nervous and anxious and untethered. And I don't think I can answer your first question of why, Ashley, but I don't trust the guy, and I feel like he's not all there.
Well, listen, I never thought this guy was much of a criminologist, I'll tell you that. And I was shocked that he got into a PhD program, because this crime was a disaster from the get-go. I mean, just strategically thinking, he messed up from the moment he left his house and turned his phone off in the middle of the night, and then turned it back on as he was driving back into his home. But let me ask you this. Overall state of mind, I almost felt like I'll call Bart, because Bart's going to tell me that you can see rage and anger and hatred of women and all of this in the signature, because I think you've been able to see that stuff before. Could you spot any of this in the scant samples that we have from Bryan Kohberger?
Yeah, I would love to say that I spotted all that, but in this handwriting, all I have is a very slow person with no clear motivation. I think it's hard to string together thoughts, honestly. I think you're referring to other shows. You've got serial killers. You have all these masterminds of murder that plan ahead. They're articulate. They're precise. They're introverted. No, this guy's none of that. He's not a mastermind. He's kind of I don't use the word, but he's a little slow.
All right, Bart, I am going to make it my mission now to sort of go through all of the case files once the gag order is dropped. I mean, I'm hoping that that's going to happen. There's a slight chance it won't, but we've been told it will. And if we can get any other writing samples, I want to invite you back and have you look more in depth at his other body of work to see if we can get any clues to this absolute monster. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, Bart Baggett joining us tonight. And like I said, he will be back, and I will be digging for more samples. Still to come on the program tonight, though, a confessed killer takes the stand at his own murder trial. That is rare, but it gets even weirder. He admits under oath that he killed his own dad and severed his dad's head and then showed it off on YouTube. So I know what you're thinking. Must be an insanity case, maybe a death penalty case. But this one is neither of those things. After the break, why a jury won't even weigh in on whether he's guilty. Next. You have heard me say that I never predict the outcome of high-stakes trials. Diddy's trial being the latest obvious reason, but tonight I'm going to add an asterisk to that. I never predict the outcome of high-stakes jury trials, which is not the same kind of trial that Mr. Justin Moan decided he wanted for his murder case. Justin Moan is the Pennsylvania lunatic who shot his father dead, beheaded him, and then held the head up as a prop in a YouTube video a year ago, January. For reasons known only to them, Bucks County prosecutors opted not to seek the death penalty against Justin. And for reasons known only to Justin, he opted for a bench trial, which means he is putting his fate into the hands of the judge and the judge alone. No jury. That's his constitutional right. You can have a jury of your peers, or you can just go with the judge. But that's not even the most strange thing that Justin Moan chose to do in his trial. He also refused more than once to claim insanity as a defense. And then yesterday He did something that every criminal defense attorney worth their weight in salt advises their client not to do. Justin Moan took the stand in his own defense. And he repeated all the same things that he said in that horrifyingly terrible video, and all the things that he said in an earlier courthouse rant. His beef? Government employees, they're the problem, including his father, Michael Moan. They were the enemy of the state. Enemy of the people, he said. He claimed that he merely wanted to arrest his dad, a citizen's arrest, but ended up having to kill him in self-defense, he said. Justin Moan called that turn of events unfortunate, but never said sorry and showed zero remorse and zero regret. The case took all of 4 days, and the judge says he'll hand down his verdict tomorrow morning, which is certain to be bad news for Justin Moan. Tom Sofield has covered this bizarre case from day one for the news site Levittown Now. Welcome back to the program, Tom. I did not see that coming. Justin Moan taking the stand. Was it a surprise to you and everyone else in court?
Well, Ashley, thanks for having me back. And, there was speculation throughout the week that Justin was saving up for some testimony, and he certainly did give that. He had no problem talking about it. He relayed what happened. He admitted to the crimes he was accused of, although his defense and closings today had a bit of a different view, and they said in his state of mind, he thought he was doing lawful citizen's arrest on his father, a federal government retiree and contractor, when he shot him in the head and then beheaded him, and like you said, used his head as a prop. But no matter what the verdict is today, Moan's attorneys are seen as a victory.
Well, I'm going to ask you about that in a second, but not before I ask you about his mom, because his mom was in the courtroom among, from what I gather, about 100 people. And there she is, victimized so terribly by this, from having her husband murdered in this awful way by her own son, allegedly. What was it like for his mom? What was the reaction?
Yeah, she has been in court, and also his sister, his brother, and their spouses all week. The only time they've been out of court is as some of these graphic pictures from the autopsy have come up and replaying of the video. But you can see on their face, this has been tough, but they've remained strong. And I'm sure, I can't even imagine being in their position, having Justin up there testifying. And he speaks in such a clear and concise manner. I don't know if it's cold and calculated or he's just being honest what he thinks happened, but I'm sure it's rough.
Yeah, I think there's no question there is a serious mental illness at play here, whether it's insanity or not. I don't think he would have prevailed with that either, but he should have gone for it. Anyway, let me ask you about the death penalty, because that's been a big issue for a lot of people in this case. Why? Because it is in play in Pennsylvania. They don't use it a lot, but it's available in Pennsylvania. But for a case like this, what is the death penalty for? What did you find out about the death penalty and the prosecutor's decision not to use it?
Sure. So we don't know why they withdrew it, but they decided not to. It could be often, Ashley, as you know, in cases it's used as a bargaining tool, and sometimes it's pulled off the table to try to spare the family from having to go through this all again at the sentencing phase. But Justin Moan's attorneys, and we have some audio of it, they see it as a victory that that's no longer on the table.
The death penalty is not on the table for Justin. The Commonwealth sought the death penalty. They named and itemized their aggravators. They put them on the record. And throughout the course of this case, the defense was successful in convincing the Commonwealth the death penalty should not be pursued. And in that sense, the defense was a success. Justin will survive. He will not be put to death, regardless of the outcome of this case.
Oh, you know what, Tom? God bless Stephen Jones. What else are you going to say? He had a real steaming pile of you-know-what for a case. If he got anything out of it, that's a win. So, there he goes. He can say that. Just quickly, I got 10 seconds left. Do you know if Justin Moan's mom had anything to do with the decision? It might have been just too much for her, and maybe she asked the prosecutors, please don't do this to my family. Please just spare my son's life.
We don't know, but we'll find out tomorrow, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. and how Justin reacts.
Well, oh, amen. The reactions thus far have been just off the chain. Tom Sofield, I'm so appreciative of your reporting. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me on.
And we'll do it again, definitely soon, given the verdict is tomorrow morning. Still ahead tonight on the True Crime Rewind. It was 14 years ago this week that this woman was acquitted of an outrageous murder. She has changed up her look since then, including her tattoos, but if you think it looks a lot like Casey Anthony, ding, 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 you are right. We'll tell you where she was out on this date, and here's a hint. It is a long way away from the Florida prison where she could have been dining tonight. That's next. Any chance you remember where you were in July of 2011, July 5th to be exact? Because I sure do. I was in the exact room that I had been in for the 6 long weeks leading up to that date. A courtroom in Orlando, Florida, where Casey Anthony, on that date, was tried for and acquitted of the murder of her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee. July 5th was the beginning of the rest of Casey Anthony's life, her free life. And where is Casey tonight? I'm not exactly sure, but I can tell you that she was here yesterday, caught by TMZ on what appears to be a date in Manchester, New Hampshire, of all places. She has covered up her infamous Bella Vita tattoo. That happened a few years back, but that is definitely Casey right there. And whatever she's up to, 14 years post-acquittal, it's got to beat the alternative, which a lot of people really still think she deserved. Because just imagine how different her dinner would have been had there been maybe a different crop of jurors, or maybe a different prosecutor, or maybe a different defense team. But that is how the system works. And Casey Anthony is free to come and go and live her life as she pleases, going on dates in whatever state she wants to go on with her new tattoos. And also photographers are free. They are free to take her picture, even more than a decade after her infamous acquittal. All right, as always, I invite you to check out my podcast, Drop Dead Serious. I'm about to put out something that'll really rock your world. We're going over all of the screen grabs from Papa Roger, the guy, online that many think was actually Bryan Kohberger enjoying post-murder. Check it out, Drop Dead Serious. Cuomo's next.